אני צריכה להגיד להם שהפגישה הזו מוקלטת, שהם ידעו שזה הולך לעלות בפייסבוק, באינסטגרם.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where in the world you may be watching this. Welcome to Beth Tzedec congregation in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I'm Steve Wernick, Rabbi Wernick, one of the rabbis of the congregation. I also happen to be privileged with our congregant and my friend, Bruce Lieboff. Bruce is the chair and I'm the vice chair of the Committee of Aliyah for the Jewish Agency for Israel. And this morning, we're talking about a very important topic for a variety of reasons for us in Beth Tzedec. One, of course, is because of our love for the state of Israel and our work with the Jewish Agency to ensure that the state is strong and that Aliyah is a continual source of both option, choice of people who want to move to Israel because it's a great place to be and to raise a family and to have a job and to work, but also for those members of the Jewish community that are in need of rescue. Today, we're going to be talking about rescue in particular. It's always an important topic, but it seems certainly for North American Jews to be even more important as we reflect on the events that took place last week in Colleyville, Texas, how anti-Semitism is still on the rise. And many Jews in many places, though anti-Semitism in North America is not of the level where Jews are in need of escape. Certainly, we know that there are Jews around the world that are, especially those coming from Ethiopia. What might be shocking to you, and this is something that we'll talk about, is that the Aliyah from Ethiopia has been ongoing for more than a decade, and that there still remain several thousands of Ethiopian Jews that are there, and currently many are trapped within the Tigray region and the unrest and civil war that's going on there. And so we're going to hear from Shai Felber, who's the director of Aliyah and Immigration and Absorption for the Jewish Agency, and from a family that is directly impacted by these occurrences and are going through and have gone through the process of Aliyah of rescue. We are also live on Facebook and YouTube. We encourage you to, if you have questions, you're joining us on the Zoom. If you have questions, please put them in the Zoom, in the chat, and we'll be sure to ask them. And if you have questions on Facebook or YouTube, put them in the chat and we'll be able to address them as well. Now it's my pleasure to introduce my friend and my colleague, Shai Felber.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Wernick, and to the entire congregation meeting here today to learn and to hear about Aliyah, immigration from Ethiopia. In the next couple of minutes, I will share with you the presentation about what is the story and how the process of Aliyah is taking place from Ethiopia, as we as the Jewish Agency are the one who are responsible for bringing the Olim from Ethiopia to Israel. We'll speak a little bit about their absorption, their challenges, and definitely about the rescue mission that the Rabbi has described. Since coming from Ethiopia lately, it's really a life-saving mission. And by then we will be followed by a family sharing with us their story. So with your permission, I'll bring up the presentation. And I'm sure that you can all see it, right? Great. So Aliyah from Ethiopia, not like other countries around the world, is based upon resolutions. In most of the world, Jews can come to Israel under the law of return. From Ethiopia, we are looking about the process of family reunification, meaning relatives that are still in Ethiopia waiting for many, many years will come and join their families in Israel that have been here for many, many years. In order to make that decision who's eligible to come, the government of Israel is issuing a government resolution and describing the criteria, as you can see over here on the screen. The main criteria, again, is that you have family relative from different degrees, either father or mother, or sister and brothers, and other relatives that are in Israel, and have submitted a request on your behalf to rejoin with them and to come to make Aliyah. In this current government resolution that was passed in November, the government have approved the amount of 3,000 olim to come to Israel. And now there's a whole process done by the Ministry of Interior Affairs, who is now actually going over all of the requests and seeing who's qualifying according to those criteria. We estimate that they will finish the screening process in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and then we're going to have the code of 3,000 olim that have been approved. The olim that are coming today to Israel and have come recently with Operation Tzur Israel, not less than a year ago, then the government approved 2,000. So the majority of the olim are young. More than 50% are under the age of 18. They are educated. I can tell you that in the last Aliyah, we have more than 130 olim with academic background and more than 500 that have finished 12 years of schooling in Ethiopia. For us, it's an opportunity, and I will explain later on how should we progress with that opportunity coming to us. The olim are very knowledgeable regarding Israel. They all have smartphone, they all use technology, the internet, obviously. They have families in Israel that would share with them information. For example, the family from Israel will support them financially since they are waiting for many, many years, but still they cannot find proper job from time to time. So the family in Israel are supporting them financially. That's why they are always in touch with the families in Israel. They are very well connected to their Judaism, spending 15 and 20 years time in the community in Addis Ababa or in Gondar. They go to synagogue, they go to classrooms, and they're going and they're studying Jewish studies all along the way. As I told you before, the government is issuing a decision. Then the government is sending officials to Ethiopia, where we have offices, both in Gondar and in Addis. They are coming to us, they are sitting in our offices, and there they are conducting the interviews of the olim. So after they've been screened in Israel, they've been invited and they've been interviewed. Once they've been interviewed and identified as the family that's been approved, now the Jewish agency is starting to take care responsibility of them. Meaning we do different vaccines, corona test, for example, now, and all of the paperwork they need in Ethiopia, like the laissez-passer, which is a temporary passport. Usually this process takes between 45 to 60 days. You have to remember, most of those people not necessarily have documents about their birth, nevertheless to say about a passport. So we are helping them to organize all the relevant documentation that they need in order to be able to come and to fly to Israel. Once they're coming to us, or we're finishing all of the examination needed, once they are ready, we will drive them from Gondar to Addis, 15-hour bus drive, and from there we will fly them to Israel. Unfortunately, given the current situation in Ethiopia, which I'll elaborate a little bit more in terms of the civil war, the roads are less safer, and we are now considering even to fly them from Gondar to Ethiopia. But our role doesn't end only with prepare them to Aliyah. Our role is first of all to make sure that they're all secured. That's why we have security officer in Ethiopia, together with local police enforcement law since the outbreak of the civil war. So we are making sure that in the community compound where they're coming and they're going davening and they're doing other activities, we will be there and provide them the security needed. Also, we are providing a special food nutrition program in Ethiopia. Given the current situation, again, people cannot find jobs. So together with other organizations, we just provided an immediate food relief support of more than $100,000 to buy basic groceries. Mainly it's the teff, it's like a local powder, flour, sorry, that them are using in Addis and in Gondar. And for this Aliyah, now that the situation is a little bit better, we will send volunteers from Israel that will arrive to Gondar and to Addis. And in the months and a half that we have the olim in our hands, we will prepare them what to expect when they are coming to Israel. about a little bit about Hebrew, family, education system in Israel, and how to behave in the first couple of months. The Olim from Ethiopia are the only one who are eligible to absorption centers that we as the Jewish Agency are managing on behalf of the government. We have currently 12 absorption centers, and we are expanding to at least another 4 more, since we need more accommodation for all of those Olim. While they are in Israel, they're coming to our absorption center, where they can tell you they get 24/7 taken care of. From our social workers, to our staff, to the Hebrew Ulpanim, to the conversion program, and even for their security. Just recently, we had Operation Guardian of the Wall. Our Olim just arrived a couple of months earlier. For them, it was a trauma, it was a shock. And after 2 days of fighting in the south, we evacuated all of our Olim from the Barnea Absorption Center in Ashkelon, and in Ashdod, and in Beersheba. We have took them to other places in Israel so they will feel much more safer. It's also, we are taking care of all the education needs of the kids, from school bags and to after school programming, and obviously job training, because after they finish their Ulpan, Hebrew Ulpan, and the conversion, usually it's take a year, then we will make sure that they're all well placed in employment. Now, up to a couple of years ago, most of the Olim, we have 95% of the Olim in the workforce, and they're working, that's not a problem. But as I told you before, the Olim that are coming today are more educated, are more capable, and our challenge is to find new way and new approaches and new jobs for them, not necessarily going and working in the factories, but rather to find them much more upscale jobs. So one of the things that we are now promoting is an high-tech program. We have a course for bus driver, we have a course for computer skills and other. This is a challenge, and I definitely think that we need to get into it, and we will be successful. As I told you, we are preparing for the massive Aliyah wave, so we are now looking to open at least 4 absorption centers. Not easy to find those kind of facilities, so we issued a tender for hotels, for example, that are willing to convert themselves and to become an absorption center, given COVID and giving other problems that we're now facing. So absorption, I would say, is one of our major challenges. As Rabbi Warnick said in the beginning, we are saving life. A couple of months ago, a year and a half ago, November 2020, the civil war broke up between the Tigray, which is a minority in Ethiopia, versus the Amhara, another tribe that is now ruling Ethiopia. That happened November 20. We know that because it was on Shabbat, and missiles were launched against the city of Gondar. This is where everything started. Since then, the rebel were up and down, but it mainly was in the area of Tigray, which is in the north side of Ethiopia. And we were less affected by that. But 4 months ago, the Tigray rebels, or the Liberation Front of the Tigrayans, have started to mobilize themselves south towards the city of Addis, the capital, and to Gondar. This is where we were very, very concerned for the life of the community. It's a minority among another minority. There were mobilization of army, troops running all over. People over the age of 18 were recruited to the army. And this is where we said to send a more robust plan to bring all of the Olim in a much more dramatic way. But in the last months or so, we are getting report that the regime, the current regime, is pushing the rebels and was successful pushing them north again to the area of Tigray. So there's less a threat for the area of Gondar and of Addis.
Shai?
Therefore, we will conduct our operation. Yes?
I just want to ask a question. There was a report in the
Please.
Globe and Mail, which is one of the national newspapers of Canada, on Friday, that evidence, it seems, of Somali death squads that are committing war crimes as part of this region. What do we know about all the different actors that seem to be impacting the circumstance?
So we know that Ethiopia is one of the most important economical countries in Africa. Therefore, a lot of countries, a lot of interest in that. Not only world power like United States or China or Russia, but also the surrounding countries. So one of the countries is Somalia, one of the countries Eritrea, and one is Djibouti. And by the way, even Egypt, because I remind you that they sit on part of the water coming up to Egypt and to the Nile. It seems from what we understand, the Somalians are involved up in the north, and the Eritrean are supporting the local regime. We know that Ethiopia, there's at least 6 different ethnic groups, and they are slaughtering among themselves. I do have to say that in Gondar and in Addis, where we are operating, things a little bit are quiet. Most of the problems that still are happening in Ethiopia are in the rural areas. And definitely there's increasing involvement of the Somalian and the Eritrean in Ethiopia. Everyone from his own reason and from their own interest. We learned that the Eritrean, by the way, have tried to support the local regime or the president Ahmed Abai, which is from the Amharic ethnic. So I would continue and say that we are operating under the assumption that even if the situation currently is safe, and we have a security officer in Ethiopia now, in Addis and in Gondar, things can change in a day, things can change dramatically. The Tigranians have not given up, although they've been pushed up to the north. And as Rabbi said before, we got different evidence of other powers that are trying again to bring up the fire in Ethiopia. So our assumption is that things might change, and if they change, they will deteriorate. But nevertheless, even things will deteriorate, our commitment is to bring no matter what. And together with our staff that is based now in Ethiopia, we got local workers, we got shlichim, Israeli emissaries now on the ground. We will put everything that we can in order to bring the Olim. From my point of view, they are not different from Olim that we need to save, like in the Ukraine in 2014, in the war over there, or other places. From our point of view, Jews that are in need, we will be there and supporting them and bringing them. Thank you very much.
And Shai, just a couple more questions that I'm sure people have. When was Operation Solomon? When was the first major airlift of Ethiopians to Israel?
1984,
Yeah,
and then Mivtza Shlomo in 1991.
All right. So why has it taken so long to get these Ethiopians to Israel?
So the answer is that most of the Olim that came during Operation Solomon and Moses were, at least from the halachically point of view, they came as Jews under the law of return. But since then, the one who have been remaining over there, I can call them Jews, but some people call them waiting. Those are families of the Jews that made Aliyah that were forced many, many years ago to Christianity. They've been forced to be Christians, and now they are returning to Judaism. Therefore, they cannot come under the law of return. And so that's one reason. The second reason is that during 2011 and 10, there was another operation called Kanfei Yonah on the wing of Zoldav, where other remaining Jews came to Israel. But the government of Israel that have brought them to Israel have cut them in the middle. What do I mean by that? For example, if you were over 18, you had parents with their kids, but the kid is over the age of 18 and have children, he couldn't come to Israel. Only their parents could have come. So they were, from 2011 up to now, even this resolution, decisions that are cutting families in the middle. And you will hear the story in a couple of minutes of the family. And so I will tell you that the reason is one, the one who came in the beginning were Jews according to the halakha, but then family members were kept behind, or those who have been forced into Christianity, and now they are returning to Judaism from the one hand. And secondly, is family members that have been split, and now they're coming under family reunification. So I have to, as an Israeli, I would say the different government resolution have caused that situation as well.
The conversion process then, is that who does that? Is that the chief rabbinate? Are those city rabbis? Is that one of the programs through the IDF?
Nativ, yes. So we call it conversion, but it's actually, I would say, returning to Judaism, Shiva LaYahadut, but it's a process done by the Rabbanut. We have teachers, Orthodox teachers that are teaching absorption centers, and when they're finishing the learning process, then they're going to the Bedin of the Agaf HaGiyur, not ministry, but the Department of Conversion, and they have to approve their Giyurim. So the chief rabbi of Israel is the one who's signing their Tudat Amara, is the one who's signing their conversion. There used to be Psaka Halacha many years ago of Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, for those you remember, that have decided that they are Jews. But afterwards, in 2010, I think, Rabbi Amar gave another resolution that they can come, but they are not fully Jewish, therefore they will do a conversion process under the Rabbanut.
Well, we'll talk about conversion another day.
It's not a qualifying criteria to come to Israel, but they know that that's part of their process when they are coming.
Right. So we want to add Avtamo Yosef now to our dialogue.
Please, Avtamo is the head of the Aliyah from Ethiopia project in the Jewish Agency. He will speak in Hebrew, and he will present the family that will share with you their story in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
So for those that are following along, here's the time in which you go to the interpretation button, and you press the English button so that as Avtamo speaks in Hebrew, you'll be able to hear simultaneous translation into English. Baruch haba, Avtamo.
Thank you. First of all, in the beginning, I say thank you. I'm very excited to be here. My English is like my Hebrew when I make Aliyah to Israel. So I speak in Hebrew, in עברית. קוראים לי אבטמו יוסף, אני מנהל פרויקט אתיופיה בסוכנות היהודית. בעצם בתקופה הקרובה אני ארכז את כל העלייה והקליטה ויישום המבצע של צור ישראל 2. ונמצאת איתנו פה בעצם משפחה מדהימה, משפחת אלהיין. היא עלתה במרץ 2021, בסוף מבצע צור ישראל. היא נקלטה במרכז קליטה חרוב בבאר שבע, אחד מתוך 12 מרכזי קליטה שיש לנו. לאמא קוראים זה נבש, לאבא קוראים גנת, הם שני הורים מקסימים, יש להם שני ילדים, בן 20 ובת 16, הם שניהם נשואים ב10 כמעט 35 שנה, הם חיכו כמעט 24 שנים עד שהם עלו לארץ, אז הם ממש התרגשו שהם הגיעו וקיבלו את הבשורה להגיע לארץ, אבל לצערי גם עם טיפה חמיצות, נשאר מאחור הבן שלהם, הבן הבכור, הנוק, ולצערי אני מקווה שבעלייה הקרובה הוא יבוא, אז אני אשמח שהם כרגע נעביר את רשות הדיבור. מי נמצא איתם? רונית? אז כרגע נעביר את זה אליהם, שיוכלו לספר טיפה על עצמם.
כן, אנחנו נמצאות כאן גם עם איינדיס המתרגמת, וגם אני נמצאת כאן, פשוט לא נכנסת לתוך המצלמה.
אוקיי.
אז נשמח שהמשפחה תספר קצת על עצמה, מה הם עברו. בבקשה.
איינדיס תתרגמי להם את זה. וגם לדבר בקול רם, כי אתם יושבים רחוק, והרמקול נמצא כאן, אז לדבר בקול רם, בבקשה. אבטמו, שוב בבקשה, אתה רוצה שהם יספרו את הסיפור של המשפחה שלהם?
כן, בקצרה, בעיקר מה התחושות בזמן ההמתנה שמה, ומה הם עברו פה בתהליך הקליטה, מה הם קיבלו מהמרכז קליטה.
ባጭሩ ከዛ በመተባበቁበት ጊዜ ሲሰማቸው የነበረው መርካዝ ክሊታ ምን እንዳገኛችሁና በአጠቃላይ ተባበራችሁ።
ይህን ቀደም ባለፈው ከተናገርነው ውጪ የምናገረው ነገር ያለ አይመስለኝም። ከዚህ ከመጣን በኋላ ማለት ነው የዚህን አካባቢ የመርካዝ ክሊታውን አካባቢ ቀደም ሲል ስለገለጽ ነው ዳግም መግለጽ ያው የተናገሩት መርከም ባልሆነ በስተቀር ሌላ ነገር የለም። ነገር ግን ከዛ ከኢትዮጵያ ያለን ምን ያህል ዓመት ተጠበቃችሁ ለሚለው 24 ዓመት የተጠበቅነው ልጃችን የቀረው 24 ዓመት ከተጠበቅን በኋላ ልንመጣ ስንሆን ስላገባ እንጂ ቀደም ሲል ነበር መምጣት የነበረው።
אני עדיס בין לבין אם תוכלי לעצור אותם, שתוכלי לתרגם בעברית, שזה יעבור להם באנגלית.
טוב. על המרכז קליטה שהם הגיעו בו, אין להם משהו חדש לספר, כבר סיפרו במפגש הראשון. אז אם נתחיל נגרנו, של המרכז קליטה.
መርካዝ ክሊታ አሪፍ እንደሆነ ቀደም ሲል ተናግረናል። ማለት ያው የምንፈልገው ነገር እያገኘን ስለሆነ እስካሁን እያገኘን ነው። ወደፊትም ደግሞ እንግዲህ እናገኛለን ብለን እንጠብቃለን። ከዚህ ውጭ የሚናገሩት ካለ እነሱ ያለውን ችግር
ከመጣን ጀምሮ የተደረገልን አካባቢ ነበር። በገንዘብ እርዳታም በሞራልም የማናውቀውንም ነገር በማሳየትና የተለያዩ አገልግሎቶችን በተለያዩ ቦታዎች ላይ ስናገኝ በማድረጋችን እዚህ በሚረሰሩ ሰዎችን ተጠቅመናል እና ጥሩ ሁኔታ ነው እስካሁን ያለው። ወደፊትም ጥሩ ነገር እንጠብቃለን።
ናዲስ רוצה לתרגם?
כן, הם מאוד הרגישו לעלות לארץ ישראל, הגיעו לישראל למרכז קליטה חרוב, מאוד שמחו שהגיעו למרכז קליטה חרוב. מיום שהגיעו ועד עכשיו הם קיבלו מעטפת של כל ההדרכה במרכז קליטה, הם למדו באולפן, למדו ביהדות, קיבלו הדרכה ביתית, ליווי צמוד, ועד עכשיו מקבלים טיפול, כל מה שהם צריכים מאז שהם הגיעו לארץ. מאוד שמחים שהגיעו למרכז קליטה.
אוקיי, בכמה מילים גם על ההמתנה באתיופיה?
של האתיופיה רואים. ስንት ጊዜ እንደጠበቃችሁና
ኢትዮጵያ ኦልሞስት በእኔ እድሜ 24 ዓመት ጠብቀናል። አዲስ አበባ ነበር። አዲስ አበባ 24 ዓመት ጠብቀናል እና ብዙ ጊዜ እንመላለስ ነበር። ፕሮሰስ እናደርግ ነበር።
הם המתינו לעלייה 24 שנים באתיופיה, הם גרו באדיס, המתינו לעלות, כל פעם היו מזמנים אותם לקונסוליה, מראיינים אותם, עושים כל מיני המשך של טיפול של התיק שלהם, אבל לקח זמן עד שהם עלו 24 שנים.
ומי נשאר מאחורה?
מה נקרא זה? הילד הבכור, ילד הגדול שלהם, בן 31. הוא ממתין לעלייה עדיין.
ואיפה הם גרו באדיס?
לפטו, שכונה לפטו באדיס, הם המתינו 24 שנים.
אוקיי, ומה התוכניות שלהם להמשך, אחרי שהם יצאו מהמרכז קליטה?
መርካዝ ክሊታ ከወጣችሁ በኋላ ፕሮግራማችሁ እንደምትፈልጉት እንደምታስቡት?
እኔ በግሌ ተመረቄ ነው መጣው ተመረቄ መቀጠል ፈልጋለሁ። ኮንስትራክሽን ቴክኖሎጂ ለማኔጅመንት አንድ ሰዓት ቢኒያን ቨንኩ
הילדים בעיקר רוצים להמשיך את הלימודים שהתחילו באתיופיה. ילד היה לומד באוניברסיטה באתיופיה באדיס, סיים את התואר שלו, מה למטה?
באנגלית construction technology and management, בעברית הנדסת בניין וניהול.
הנדסת בניין הוא למד, הוא סיים את התואר והוא רוצה להמשיך ללמוד בארץ גם.
יפה. ומה הם הכי אוהבים בישראל?
ישראל ሀገር ምንድን ነው የምትወዱት? ምን ወደዳችሁ? ምን አስደሰታችሁ?
መጀመሪያ ስለሰጠን አካባቢውና እንክብካቤና ለዚህ ጋር የሚሰጠው ክብር ደስ ይላል። ኑሮም የተሻለ
מאוד שמחו ונרגשו לארץ ושמחו מהזכות שנותנים לאזרחים שלהם, המדינה, המעטפת שנותנים, האהבה שנותנים בארץ ישראל מאוד שימח אותם.
ואיך הם עוברים את תקופת הקורונה?
እንዴት ነው ኮሮና እንዴት ነው ያሳለፋችሁ?
እንደ ማንኛውም ህብረተሰብ እንኖራለን። ደህና ነው እግዚአብሔር ይመስገን። እስካሁን ሰላም ከገባን ጊዜ ጀምሮ ማለት ነው። ደህና ነው እግዚአብሔር የተመሰገነ ይሁን። ወደፊትም እንግዲህ ይህንን እግዚአብሔር ይሰጠናል ብለን እናስባለን። ጤንነታችንን ስንወጣም እንግዲህ በይገስተን እንግዲህ በሰላም ለመኖርና ያው ባህላችን ጠብቀን ለመኖር ለመቀመጥ ነው የምናስበው ማለት ነው። ያለው ሁኔታ ይሄ ነው።
בקורונה תקופה לא קלה, עד עכשיו המשפחה לא חלתה בקורונה, ברוך השם אנחנו עוברים מזה, וגם בעתיד אנחנו רוצים לקנות בית, רוצים להתקדם בחיים, הילדים שלי רוצים ללמוד ולהתקדם בחיים בארץ ישראל, ומאוד שמחים שהם פה.
גם אנחנו שמחים שהם פה.
גם בטעם בסדר.
איפה הם מתכננים לקנות בית?
בדיוק ממוזר מתפלגות.
אני ፍላጎት קריית גת מוצאת נובד.
הם היו רוצים לקנות בית בקריית גת.
בעזרת השם. מישהו מהמשתתפים רוצה לשאול אותם שאלות? הרב, אתה רוצה לשאול משהו? You want to ask something?
So I guess one question that I have is how does Israel or did Israel meet your expectations of what the country would be like?
האם מדינת ישראל עונה על כל הציפיות שלהם?
כן.
One word answer, okay.
לא, הבנת שאלה אבל? תשאלי אותם.
לא הבנתי.
אמרתי, האם מדינת ישראל עונה על הציפיות שלהם?
האם זה מה שהם חלמו? האם זה מה שהם ציפו לו?
ישראל ሀገር ያሰባችሁት ያለማችሁት ነው ያገኛችሁት? እንዴት ምን ይሰማችኋል?
አዎ የሚሰማን ነገር በጣም አሪፍ ነው። ምክንያቱም ቤተሰባችን ተከታታ ያለው የዚህ ነው። እናታችን ልጆቻችን ልጆቻችን ዘመድ በሙሉ እዚህ ነው ያለው። ስለዚህ አስበው ነው ያገኘው። አዎ ዋናው ጥያቄያችን ትልቁ ነገር ልጃችን ነው።
זה מעל הציפייה שלנו. אנחנו כל כך חיכינו לעלות לארץ, נפגשנו עם המשפחות שלנו, עם האחים, עם הסבתות, עם הדודים, והארץ כל כך יפה, מאוד שמחים שהגענו לארץ, אבל מאז שעלינו לארץ לא מפסיקים לחשוב על הבן שנשאר מאחורה. זו המחשבה שעוברת עבור כל המשפחה שלנו, כל יום.
בעזרת השם שהוא יגיע במבצע הקרוב. עוד שאלות? רוצים לשאול? הרב?
If people have questions, please be sure to type them into the chat, and if you're watching us on Facebook, you can write a comment into the questions there, and we'll be sure to ask that question.
זה גם בסדר.
Yeah.
אנחנו נגיד לגנת ולזנבש תודה רבה. אנחנו מתפללים שבעזרת השם תראו את הבן הבכור שלכם, ושיהיה לכם טיפה נחת, ובעזרת השם הוא יוכל לעבור ביחד איתכם לקריית גת, ושתמשיכו להיות בריאים, ושהקורונה לא תתקרב אליכם.
אני יכולה להגיד משהו בתור עובדת סוציאלית שמלווה את המשפחה?
כן.
בהחלט, בהחלט.
תודה, תודה. אני הייתי רוצה לציין שאנחנו באמת פגשנו משפחה מאוד מאוד נעימה, אם יורשה לי גם משכילה וככה עם הרבה מוטיבציה לבוא וללמוד את השפה העברית, ובכלל עוד דברים שלמרכז הקליטה יש להציע, ולצד זה, או יחד עם זאת, באופן סימולטני, יש גם לצד המוטיבציה קושי מאוד מאוד גדול להתפנות לתהליך של הסתגלות והיכרות עם מה שיש למרכז קליטה ולארץ ישראל להציע, בגלל הגעגועים לבן. בעצם אין איזושהי פניות של מחשבה, אין איזושהי פניות רגשית להתעסק באמת בהסתגלות ובתהליך של קליטה, וכמי שמלווה את המשפחה, אני באמת שותפה לכאב המאוד מאוד גדול, שאני חושבת שבגלל הפומביות וכמות המשתתפים והאופן של הזום, אז ככה זה פחות בא לידי ביטוי, אבל יש פה כאב אנושי מאוד מאוד גדול של משפחה שפשוט מתגעגעת לילד שלה באתיופיה, כל כולה רוצה רק להתאחד איתו, זה התפילות שלהם בבוקר, בערב ובצהריים, וקשה להעביר את זה במילים. אני כמי שמלווה את המשפחה בעיקר נוכחת לראות את הכאב הזה, לתמוך, ולפעמים גם קצת לתת תקווה איפה שאפשר.
תודה, רוני.
Ronit, thank you.
תודה.
Please tell them that we understand. And we will certainly do our part in supporting the Jewish Agency to ensure that, God willing, you and your son can be reunited in the not so distant future.
Amen, amen. תודה. תודה.
So Shai, one of the questions that just appeared in the chat is, is there situation comment with family members still being left behind? And I think it is, right? That's this round of Aliyah is really about family reunification. So when we're talking about 3,000,
unfortunately, you're right. We're talking about 3,000 that's been approved now. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's a very common situation. Now we estimate that there are approximately between 8,000 to 10,000 Jews still waiting in Ethiopia. So if we bring now 3,000, then we can estimate what's happening with the remaining. And yes, the situation where your family members are being left behind is common, mainly because certain decision in the past was that if you, let's say your parents and you have children, and if your children are over the age of 18 and are married and have kids already, they cannot come and make Aliyah. So therefore, we are creating in our own hands that situation. That's why their brother couldn't come to Israel because he's over 18 and he's got family over there and he was not allowed to come. And you find a lot of families in that situation that they're making a decision, let's come who can, at least that, and hopefully the remaining will come later on. So unfortunately, yes, it's a common. If there was, Alevai, one decision to bring the whole 8,000, 10,000 that are waiting together, we wouldn't have been in that situation that every year we need to have another government resolution in order to bring them to Israel.
And what are some of the reasons that the government seems to be making these decisions piecemeal?
So I would say one is the uncertainty about who's left behind. Secondly, a lot of political power that needs to push. Given the fact that the minister today is a member of the Ethiopian community, it's part of the lobbying. So unfortunately, there's a lot of lobbying need to do so. Sorry. And third, I would say financially, absorbing the oil from Ethiopia, the government is paying the majority of the amount. And the absorption centers and the mortgage afterwards. That's all of giving all of that. There's not one decision of who can come. It's a policy decision making that Alevai will have politicians that will make a one-time decision. Up to now, it didn't come to that.
Avtamo, one of the questions that was asked was how many members are there in the son's family and will they be able to come with him?
Speak in עברית.
בסדר.
הערכות מדברות שיש בערך היתרה ממבצע צור ישראל אחד, יש בערך איזה 200 ילדים שנותרו מאחורה, ילדים להורים, אבל בבדיקה נוספת שעשו, גם כאלה שהם נינים ליהודים, מדובר בערך על כ-700 עד 1,000 ילדים, שכל אחד מהם כמובן נשוי ויש לו ילדים, זה הערכות כרגע. בדקו כבר במשרד הפנים לפי הקריטריונים של ההחלטה האחרונה, הם כמעט מגיעים ל3,000. זאת אומרת שכאילו עוד לא התחלנו וכבר עומדים במי שעומד בהגדרה.
Wow. Another question that we see in the chat is, can you address the issue of racism that is experienced by many of the Ethiopian communities in Israel?
Aftam will answer, not because he's an Ethiopian, but also because in his previous position, he worked with the Ministry of Defense on program for youth and for joining the IDF in Israel. So I think he can answer the best from his knowledge and experience.
טוב, יש הרבה אתגרים בלהיות אתיופי במדינת ישראל, בין היתר גם עניינים של גזענות, בשונה מהעליות האחרות, העלייה מאתיופיה עלייה שונה. אני אגיד את זה גם בצורה עדינה, לא תמיד היה קל לעלות לארץ. ובגלל שאתה במידה רבה גם זר, ותמיד בולט בסביבה, אז בהכרח תמיד אתה נראה אחרת, אבל יותר מזה גם אתה מגיע ממדינה שנקודת הפתיחה שלך לא בהכרח דומה לאחרים. אז אתה תמיד צריך להוכיח את עצמך כפליים, ותמיד צריך לקבל שוויון הזדמנויות שאחרים לא בהכרח נדרשים להוכיח את עצמם, והגזענות תמיד היא נמצאת כל הזמן ברקע, אפשר לראות את זה במשטרה, אפשר לראות את זה בצבא, אפשר לראות את זה בכל מקום, אבל לא מתייאשים. זה ברור שבאמונה והרבה עבודה קשה אנחנו נצליח. כמובן יש הרבה פעולות שהמדינה, הממשלה עושה בשביל להתמודד עם התופעה הזאת, אבל אני מאמין שבצעדים קטנים, ברגע שיהיו יותר בני הקהילה בעמדות השפעה, נוכל להפחית את החשדנות כלפי הקהילה האתיופית, אבל זה לא מעסיק אותי היום. אז אנחנו עסוקים בלהגשים חלומות כרגע.
ראיתי שמישהו שאל... סליחה. ראיתי שמישהו שאל כמה בני משפחה יש להנוק באתיופיה?
לא, הם שאלו באופן כללי כמה ילדים נותרו בכלל שההורים שלהם בארץ.
לא, יש פה שאלה כתובה, ממש שמדברת על הנוק עצמו, אני לא יודעת מי כתב את זה, אבל זה בצ'אט,
זה הכוונה בכלל.
Let's see what the question was.
How many members in Son's family will all be able to come with him?
זה בהחלטה הכוללת הכוונה.
אוקיי. לא הבנתי את זה ככה, אבל בסדר.
I think that the questioner wants to know specifically about Enoch's family. How many family members does he have, and are we expecting them to come on this next round of Aliyah?
רונית, שמעת?
כן. איירדיס, את יכולה לשאול אותם אם להנוק יש ילדים באתיופיה, מה המצב שלו עכשיו?
נשוי פלוס ילד אחד.
That's why he couldn't come in the last resolution, because he have his own kids. Now, giving the new criteria that we're just facing, hopefully you will be able to come, depending on the decision of the Ministry of Interior Affairs.
סוגיה מורכבת.
For sure.
Yeah.
Shai, what are some of the challenges that the Jewish Agency has in order to complete this work and to do this work?
So the first one is to work in Ethiopia, given the situation over there. If it's the civil war, obviously, a security reason. We have our shlichim, our Israeli emissary that are operating on the ground together with the local staff. But definitely that's one of the risks, I would say, that we are having. Secondly, fundraising. Obviously, it's a challenge. We need to fundraise in order to be able to bring the Olim to Israel. Every Ole, to bring them, and the initial absorption cost costs $2,500 per Ole. So that I would say. And the thirdly is the absorption. For the long term, our main challenge is to make sure that they will integrate into the Israeli society with the proper skills and without any racism from the surrounding Israelis. So we need to invest a lot of effort that the Israelis, the veteran Israelis, will get to know these Olim, will get to support them, to love them, and to care for them.
And what are some of the things that that we in North America, that we in Canada can do to be helpful?
So I think that, first of all, advocating. I think the voice of world Jewry is highly important over here. The more the Jews from around the world and Canada will advocate in order to bring all of those who are remaining and that are eligible, and not to be in a situation that you just heard about the story. So I think one of them is advocating. That's for sure one of the things. And secondly, together with JFNA, we launched a campaign, and I'm sure that the other federations are gathering together in order to support this effort. And thirdly, Toronto, you have a partnership, if I remember correctly, what the partnership together. Part of our absorption centers are in Beersheba, and hopefully after COVID and when missions can come to Israel, your support in by coming and visiting and seeing and volunteering and work with those Olim, I think that would be much appreciated. So I invite you after COVID or in between COVID, if it's possible, to come and to take part through your volunteers, for your lay leaders, to come and to visit and to explore it from firsthand.
So let me respond to all three of those things for our community and outline some of those responsibilities. First and foremost, if you have a relationship with the Israel Consul in Toronto, be sure to call her or to write to her. Share with her that you just learned more about the circumstances of Aliyah rescue for the Ethiopian community and advocate through the consul. If you happen to have connections with Israeli government officials, members of the Knesset, leaders of the political parties, tap their emails as well, and make sure that they know that this is something that as part of worldwide Jewish community we care about. Also, it's $50 million that the government has allocated. It's Jewish agencies has allocated $50 million, and I think there's a $5 million fundraising goal for the diaspora community through JFNA, through Jewish Federations of North America. There's a $5 million fundraising goal. I think $3 million has been raised thus far. So if you're moved to make a contribution, you can make a contribution through our local UJA Toronto, UJA Federation of Toronto, and designate it for the Jewish Agency for the Aliyah of Ethiopians. Any amount is helpful. And then finally, our community is planning a trip to Israel April of 23. God willing, by then COVID will be behind us. But April 23, in celebration of Israel's 75th Yom Ha'atzmaut, be part of what I hope to be 2 buses from Beth Tzedec that will be going to Israel, and we'll make it a point of our itinerary to spend some time in one of the Ethiopian Aliyah centers, to meet with people, to volunteer for a little bit, and to roll up our sleeves and be hands-on with this. So those are all the different opportunities to support this work through advocacy, through fundraising, and through visitation and volunteerism. Shai and Avtamo, and to the mishpacha, b'diuk lemishpacha, toda rabba mehalev me'amakor shelanu, anachnu maminim b'midat kol Yisrael arvim ze b'zeh. And anachnu b'yachad mipnei she'hamidah hazot.
Thank you, and thank you,
we
Beth
operate
Tzedec.
on that value. That's why we're here, and that's why we do have a global Jewish community. Avtamo, thank you for your work, and we wish you Hatzlacha Rabbah. And Shai, I know how hard you work because we work together on this, and it's really one of the thrills of my experiences be able to be your partner through the Jewish Agency.
Thank you for your leadership, and Bruce, thank you very much.
Bruce couldn't be with us today, but we do want to give him a shout out for
Definitely
for the work that he does, which has been really superb. So thank you everyone for joining us. We want to wish you a pleasant week. If you're in Toronto, stay warm. And for everyone,
or if you can see the snow in Israel this week, hopefully in Yerushalayim, Alevai.
Yeah, it's I think it's minus 15 today, Shai.
Sure.
It's
We're
Celsius.
not competing.
Welcome to Canada.
Not competing.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a pleasant week. Stay warm, stay healthy, stay safe, and God willing, we'll be able to meet in Israel in the not so distant future and meet like this in person.
Thank you.
תודה רבה.
Bye.
ביי.